o'clock in the morning. Your room is pitch black, and the only thing illuminating your face is the cold, blue glare of your phone screen. Your chest feels tight, your breathing is shallow, and your thumb is hovering over a button while a digital clock on the screen is ticking down. 0259, 0258. The countdown is bleeding away in bright red neon numbers, and you can literally hear your own heartbeat echoing in your ears. In your shopping cart is a pair of limited edition sneakers, or maybe a clothing drop from a brand you followed because everyone else does. The total says $200. You look at your banking app, and your balance is $12.47. Your stomach drops. You feel this overwhelming, suffocating wave of panic because you know that if you don't hit buy right now, they will sell out. The window will close, and tomorrow morning you will have to watch your friends post their screenshots on Instagram while you are left behind, completely invisible. And then, right beneath that $200 total, a tiny, colorful, friendly-looking button appears. It says, Pay with Klarna. Just 4 easy payments of $50. No interest, no credit check, no problem. Your brain doesn't see a $200 debt anymore. Your brain sees a harmless $50 bill, a minor inconvenience. Your thumb moves on its own. You double-click, the screen flashes green, order confirmed. You let out a massive breath you didn't even know you were holding. Your muscles relax, and for a split second, you feel this incredible warm rush of dopamine. You did it. You survived the drop. You are safe. But you aren't safe. You are just numb. And that warm feeling is going to evaporate before the package even arrives at your door, leaving you with a hollow, nauseating hangover that you will have to carry for the next 4 months. I know exactly how you feel, because I used to be the guy who thought he was too smart to ever fall for this. I used to sit in my room surrounded by finance textbooks and behavioral economics papers, completely convinced that I had the system figured out. I could explain to you exactly how artificial scarcity works on paper. I knew that when a brand says they only made 100 pieces, they are deliberately suffocating the supply just to make our logical brains short-circuit. I could write an essay on visible social proof and explain how human beings are evolutionary hardwired to crave status symbols because our ancestors feared being cast out of the tribe more than they feared death. I read all the case studies about how diamond cartels manufactured the concept of engagement rings out of thin air just to sell a common rock. I had all the theory memorized. I was the guy who told everyone else to just take a screenshot of the item, wait it out, and read a book on consumer psychology instead of spending money. I thought that knowing the rules of the game meant I couldn't be played by it. But theory doesn't mean a damn thing when you are 22 years old, living in an American city where inflation is eating your paycheck alive. Rent just went up another 20%, and your entry-level job pays you $15 an hour before taxes. Theory doesn't protect you when you are exhausted from working a 10-hour shift, staring at your phone and watching every single person in your social circle live a life that looks infinitely better, wealthier, and more exciting than yours. The system doesn't care about your finance degree. The system is designed by thousands of data scientists and behavioral psychologists who spend millions of dollars studying how to bypass your logic and strike you directly in your deepest, rawest insecurities. They don't sell you clothes, they don't sell you shoes, they sell you an escape from your own reality. They sell you a temporary badge of honor that screams to the world that you were doing okay even when you were drowning inside. And so, despite all my knowledge, I started quadding that button, that beautiful, dangerous little button. The first time it was just $50 for a jacket. Then it was $35 for a concert ticket. Then it was $45 for a pair of sunglasses. It felt like magic. I was living a lifestyle I couldn't afford, and my bank account didn't seem to care because the immediate hits were so small. But then the next month arrived, and the month after that. Suddenly, my life became a terrifying, high-stakes game of financial Tetris. The pieces started falling faster and faster, and I couldn't move them into place in time. It wasn't just one $50 payment anymore. It was a $50 payment on Tuesday, a $35 payment on Thursday, a $45 payment on Friday, and a $25 payment on Sunday. Every time I opened my email, there was another automated message from Klarna, Afterpay, or Affirm quietly letting me know that money was being deducted from my account. My income hadn't changed, but my money was being bled out by 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Then the real nightmare hit. The first of the month arrived, and my landlord texted me asking for rent. I logged into my bank app, confident that I had enough, only to see that my balance was completely wiped out by a dozen automated micro-debts that I had completely forgotten about. I panicked. I had to pay my rent, so I took out my credit card, a card I promised myself I would only use for emergencies, and I used it to pay my daily expenses. I started using one debt tool to pay off another debt tool, entering a downward spiral that felt like quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. My phone became a source of pure anxiety. Every time it vibrated, my stomach clenched because I thought it was another automated collection agency or another overdraft notice from my bank. I was working 45 hours a week, coming home completely exhausted, and realized that every single dollar I earned was already spent before it even hit my account. I wasn't working to build a future, I was working to pay for things I bought 3 months ago that I didn't even care about anymore. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed one night, looking around my room. The space was cluttered with shoeboxes, hype clothing, and gadgets. On paper, if you looked at my social media, I looked like I was thriving. But the reality was that I was sitting there in the dark, staring at a mountain of expensive things, unable to afford a $5 meal from the grocery store. I felt so incredibly stupid. I felt dirty, ashamed, and exhausted from putting on a performance for a world that didn't care about me. The moment everything broke for me was a few months later. I was so desperate for cash to cover my utilities that I packed up that original pair of limited edition sneakers, the ones that caused me that intense midnight panic, and I took them down to a local thrift store in the city to sell them for quick cash. I walked into the store, carrying the shoes in their original box, expecting the guy behind the counter to recognize how rare and valuable they were. He didn't even blink. He just took them out, glanced at them for 2 seconds, and tossed them carelessly into a massive wooden bin in the back of the shop. I walked over to that bin, looked inside, and my heart completely stopped. There, lying under a layer of dust, mixed with old flannel shirts, broken electronics, and worthless trinkets, were 5 other pairs of the exact same shoes, the exact same limited edition, exclusive, hyper-rare sneakers that had caused me to ruin my credit score and lose sleep. They were marked down to $5 each, and nobody was even looking at them. I stood there in that dusty thrift store, and it felt like a bucket of ice water was poured directly over my head. The illusion completely shattered. I realized that the system had lied to me, and I had willingly swallowed the lie. The brand didn't care about art or exclusivity, they just knew exactly how to make me panic. The people on Instagram didn't care about the shoes, they were just as insecure as I was, using the exact same credit cards and the exact same payment apps to hide their own financial emptiness. I hadn't bought a product, I hadn't bought status, I bought a manufactured illusion designed to trap me in a cycle of endless labor just to pay off things that would end up in a trash bin in less than a year. I was trading my actual life, my freedom, and my peace of mind for 5 seconds of hit of dopamine and the approval of people I didn't even like. That was the day I decided to stop playing their game. I walked out of that store, went home, sat down at my desk, and looked at my debt not as a number, but as a measurement of my stolen time. I looked at everything I owned and realized I needed to change the currency I used to evaluate my life. From that day forward, I stopped looking at prices in terms of dollars. Dollars are abstract concept designed to make spending easy. Instead, I started translating every single price tag into something real, something painful, my hours of human labor. If you want to buy an item that costs $150 and you make $15 an hour, that item does not cost $150. That item costs 10 hours of your life. It costs 10 hours of sitting in traffic, dealing with an abusive boss, standing until your feet ache, and breathing in toxic stress. When you look at an online drop through that lens, the psychology shifts completely. You look at that $75 hoodie and ask yourself, is this piece of cotton worth 5 hours of my limited time on this earth? Is it worth 5 hours of my freedom? 99% of the time, the answer is an absolute resounding no. The next thing I did was create what I call the quarantine cart rule. The entire retail system relies on urgency. They give you a 24-hour deadline because they know that if you have time to sleep, your prefrontal cortex will wake up, your logic will return, and you will realize you don't need their product. So I forced myself to build a wall between my impulse and my wallet. Every time an item dropped, every time a countdown clock started ticking, I forced myself to close the tab, turn off my laptop, and walk away for 48 hours. I told myself that if the item sold out, it meant the universe just saved me from a terrible financial decision. And you know what happened? In almost every single case, when I woke up 2 days later, the emotional urgency was completely gone. I couldn't even